Good evening, everyone. Members of council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, on the closed session, I have a pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I see none. Then we will move on to approval of council minutes. Looking for motion to receive the minutes of council meetings held September 12th and September 19th. Councillor Jacobs, Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? Not seeing any. There are no public meetings or courts of revision today. But we do have reports of staff and delegations. First report is one regarding the second dwelling agreement. I'm assuming Danielle.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, members of council. Administration has received a request from the owners of 113 Mercia Road 5. This property is located on the north side of Mercia Road 5. It's just east of the Albuna town line, and it's sort of tucked in south of the Leisure Lake Trailer Park and Campground. The owners are looking to construct a new 1,300 square foot dwelling on that same property. Both the existing and the proposed dwellings are shown on the site plan that is attached to this report. The location of the proposed dwelling does comply with the A5 provisions. Under the A5 provisions, so our agricultural residential zone, you are permitted to have one house per lot. However, our OP says that you can have a second dwelling on a temporary basis, provided you enter into an agreement with the municipality. That agreement specifically states that when the original residence will be removed, and it requires that the owners submit a security in doing this. The agreement goes on, if the owner does not demolish or remove that original dwelling, the municipality will be able to go into the property and do the same, and that any expenses to do that will be added to the tax assessment for the property. With respect to ensuring that the original dwelling is removed, in the last 5 years we've brought forward about 6 similar requests. Planning has been able to work with building to track the building permit issuance as well as the demo permit issuance, and those have been, that process has been worked very well to close the loop and make sure that the original dwelling has been removed. There's no financial impact to entering into this agreement, and the recommendation before council this evening is that the request to enter into the second dwelling agreement with the owners of 113 Mercia Road 5 to allow 2 residential dwellings on one property for a period of 1 year for the construction of a new dwelling be approved, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute that agreement.
Council's wishes. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, supported by Councillor Verbicki. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Next to report is one regarding the Municipal Register of Heritage Properties. Danielle again? Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I did want to note that this report was prepared by Olivia Ashton. She was our Heritage Research Assistant for the past summer. She was also here in 2015 and was able to present the request to Council from the Heritage Committee to host public open houses on their behalf that year. This is the follow-up report to that, but unfortunately the timing didn't work out for her to make this presentation as she's returned to school in Ottawa. So I'll begin with that then. The Ontario Heritage Act requires that the clerk of every municipality keeps a current publicly accessible register of properties of cultural heritage value or interest within the municipality. This is often referred to as the register. The register must include all properties that have been designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. Council may recall that designation is a long-term protection. A designated property cannot be demolished or altered in a way to affect the heritage attributes of the property without the permission of Council. Leamington currently has 4 designated properties. One of them is showing on the screen. The Heritage Act also allows a property that has not been designated to be placed on the register. This is called listing. Together, they make up the register, and that register is intended to be a dynamic document that's revised and updated on a regular basis. Each page of the register contains relevant information about the property. It can include the street address, legal description, architectural style and features, date of construction, cultural historic value, and it can also include photographs. So we are showing a sample page from the register. Again, this is the designated property at 34 Clark Street. In addition to the 4 designated properties, the register would include 270 properties of potential cultural heritage value. Those would be your listed properties. Owners of these properties were invited to public open houses that were hosted by the Leamington Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee in 2015. The purpose of those open houses was to give information to the public about the Ontario Heritage Act, to let them know about the importance of protecting heritage resources, as well as the impacts or what it means to be on the register. These open houses were very well attended. We did not receive any requests for properties to be removed from the register. We also received 4 subsequent requests to further research properties that were on that list. So the Heritage Register is has legal status, and it can provide interim protection of heritage resources that are on that list. If an owner wants to demolish a home that is on the list, they must provide notice to council under the Building Code Act prior to a building permit being issued. Council then has 60 days to provide direction on that notice in consultation with the Heritage Committee and may choose to proceed in a number of ways. 1, if the value of the heritage property is proven to be non-significant, council may remove the property from the register and a demolition permit can be issued as applied for. 2, council can use the 60 days to research and document the characteristics of the property. They can work with the Heritage Committee and the owner to find alternative options to mitigate the loss of the heritage value, to note the to document the features of the home, and issue the permit accordingly. However, if the physical, historical, contextual value of the heritage property is proven to be significant, a notice of intent to designate under Section 29 of the Heritage Act can be issued by council. The demolition permit would not be issued, and the process to designate the property under the Ontario Heritage Act would proceed from that point on. So adopting a register which includes both designated and listed properties results in a very high level of protection for heritage properties, and it affords the Heritage Committee the ability to thoroughly research and document a property prior to any demolition, and it really aims for the protection of properties. It also allows council the opportunity to make the final decision on whether to remove a property from the register and grant a demolition permit, or issue a notice to designate based on the heritage significance of a property. The Leamington Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee would like to see positive efforts made in Leamington regarding heritage conservation. Preserving heritage, both cultural and structural, within a community fosters civic identity and pride. It draws attention to history and the development of a community, and it helps to create a sense of place. With a complete register, properties within the municipality will be, the municipality will be better able to develop a plan that promotes economic development, community building, and heritage preservation. If council chooses not to include listed properties on the register, administration will still maintain an inventory of potential heritage properties. An inventory does not have legal status under the Ontario Heritage Act. It cannot be used to delay or deny a demolition permit. It will be used by administration when considering applications submitted under the Planning Act, to catalog the existing heritage properties, features, and stories of our community, and to educate property owners. There are no financial impacts to adopt the register, but just so that council is aware, the Ontario Heritage Act, the Municipal Act, and the Planning Act do allow for financial incentives to provide for the preservation of a heritage property. So the most common incentives we see are property tax rebates, tax credits, reimbursements for restorations, as well as community recognition awards. There are no financial incentives being proposed at this time. Further consideration of the available incentives and the impact to the municipal budget will be brought forward to council at a later time. However, I did want to point out that the planning services budget does include funds to cover the costs associated with researching heritage properties within the municipality. These funds may be assessed to research at a homeowner's request for the purpose of preserving and promoting cultural heritage features and for consideration for designation under the Heritage Act. The recommendation before council this evening is to adopt the Municipal Register of Heritage Properties, including properties that are designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, as well as properties listed as having potential cultural heritage value to the community.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Danielle, pass on to this Olivia what a good job she did. I really enjoyed reading this report here this weekend, especially the 200 and some page, 270 page amendment that came with it. My thing that I want to get some further, explore a little further is the financial impact, the benefits that people get from being on this list. I'm assuming the benefits happen once they are on the list. In particular, the reimbursements for restoration. You know, most of this, these homes are beautiful, and I really like the ones that have been restored to their former glory. Some of them in there could use some maintenance. And I'm just wondering, do people want to get on this list so that they can, take part of those reimbursements for restoration, the tax credits? That's the first part of my question. Second part is the incentives that aren't being proposed at this time. I'm just wondering what an incentive program would look like. Would it be something like a CIP program that we had? I'm just wondering what we were thinking and maybe what other municipalities in Ontario do.
So at this time, we have 4 designated properties. They receive no financial incentive to be designated. So council does not have to offer any incentives, but just as the word incentive implies, that if there is a carrot there, maybe some people will bite and choose to maintain their homes, protect their homes for the long term because of the incentive. So really what we were just pointing out is at this time, the Heritage Committee is not proposing that by adopting this register that you're committing yourself to any financial incentives. We would like time to research what those possible incentives could be. So those are the ones that we listed. Rebates, tax rebates or incentives, reimbursements for work that you've done, which would be similar to a CIP. We can have heritage CIPs as well outside of that. And we would propose that we would need to bring that back to council for consideration at budget time. So what have other municipalities done? Other municipalities offer a rebate of a certain percentage for taxes. That's a common one. So you're able to determine what would the impact be by allowing, best case scenario, 274 properties to have a certain amount of tax rebate on a residential tax. Again, best case scenario, but you would place probably criteria on that to be designated or protected for the general good over the long term, not just on the list. Other municipalities have programs similar to a CIP to say that if you have a designated home, you qualify for rebates for work on heritage features or that preserve heritage features on an annual basis. There's a number of them. Nothing proposed at this time. The committee still needs to do some research on that and the impacts to the municipal budget.
Okay. Councillor Verbicki.
Through the Mayor, thank you. After reading them all, as beginning to be like a little game to seeing where people lived, and I only found one mistake in here. I just want to know what we can do about it. And I did come in Friday to ask if the person had pulled a demolition permit. Because on one of the pages, it says that when the house was built, it's page 222, his house was demolished, but yet he's on here. He was quite surprised because he's still living in the house. So when I came in to find out if the permit had been pulled, it was for a greenhouse. Now, I know this is a brown house, but I just want to make sure that if it goes through that, he can still live in his house and that. So it's page 222. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship. I also got a comment, like Councillor Wilkinson, about Olivia. She's truly an asset to the committee there. Her report and her work was outstanding. My question is, during the open house, was it explained to them about if they became the registry, if they were put on the registry, that they would, there's an opportunity that might be problems when it came to demolition, or what? Did anybody object to that?
So that is one of the items that we specifically spoke to individuals about. What does it mean to be on the register? So I think it was very clear what it meant to be designated, so that if your property moved through that process to become designated and the level of protection on those features. And then we also went through what does it mean to be listed. So you're not designated, but we think you have some potential. We noted that it wasn't council's intention to restrict anyone. You really want to do this with the owner's cooperation. And so that's the process that's been proposed, to say that you just need to provide, in order to comply with the Building Code Act, you just need to provide notice to council to let them know that you would like to designate it. It affords us some time to ensure that it's, to research it, to see whether it's a significant property, what the level is, but really the decision always comes down to council, and council can always decide to remove it from the register and allow it to be to be removed and demolished at that time. So everyone, that process was explained. We had a number of people that came in that noted that they bought the property as an income property, and they don't know what they want to do with it, and they wanted to know what their options were. So we reviewed that process as a possibility.
Good, or, okay, thank you. So Councillor Hammond? Okay, a quick question, I ask this every time, so I know Danielle will be prepared. Out of the list of 270 properties, I'm assuming now we aren't focusing just on the urban area, we've expanded out to the rural area, so, good, okay. So if you'd like to move the recommendation, and supported by Councillor Dunn. So Councillor Hammond, Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Thank you. The next report is one regarding borrowing bylaw for drainage capital works. Mr. Del Ciencio.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. In March 7th of this year, Council passed bylaw, being a bylaw to provide the construction of a bridge over the John Leslie Drain. This drainage capital work was affected one municipal property. And in August, the property owners paid the required administration fee as well as a portion of the work completed and requested to finance the outstanding portion of the project cost. Collins Estate Reserve Fund, held by the municipality, has sufficient funds to finance this debenture request, and as such will lend the principal of $36,491 to the municipality. The interest rate set out in the bylaw is 3.63%, and the term of this debenture is 5 years. The financial impact to the Collins Estate Reserve Fund over the 5-year term will be interest income of about $4,000. Therefore, it is recommended that administration be directed to bring forward bylaw 60-16 for council considerations to borrow funds for the municipal drainage capital works performed at the John Leslie Drain.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions from council? Moved by Councillor Verbicki, supported by Councillor Jacobs. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Next item on the agenda is a report regarding a request for amendment to a lease. And Ms. Percy?
Council recall in 2012, Council approved entering into a 3-year operational lease agreement with Chitani Enterprises, Inc. for the operation of the concession stand. The initial term of the lease expired September 30th, 2014. On October 6, 2014, Council considered a report and approved entering into a further operational lease for a term commencing January 1st, 2015 and ending September 30th, 2017. The agreement allows for an extension of 3 years upon the agreement of the municipality and Chitani. The original lease allowed the tenant to sell beer and coolers. However, in 2014, Council considered and approved a request from the tenant to allow the sale of wine. The current lease allows for the continued sale of beer, coolers, and wine. On July 25, 2016, Council considered a council report regarding a request to amend the lease agreement to allow the sale of other alcohol, in addition to beer, wine, and coolers at the Hogs for Hospice Brett Michaels concert. The request was approved. The operators are now seeking the ability to increase the drink options available to customers without having to make continuous amendments to the operational lease agreement for specific events. Administration supports a request of Chitani to provide an increased level of service to its customers and visitors at Seacliff Park. There's no financial impact to the municipality as a result of the amendment to the operational lease. So the recommendation before council is that the lease be amended to allow that the tenant shall obtain a provincial license to sell alcohol. All alcoholic drinks shall be sold and served only in plastic cups. All alcohol shall be sold on the premises, shall be consumed on the premises, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the amending agreement.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Since we okayed back in 2012 the sale of liquor, I think that the Chitanis have proven that in that period of time, I have heard of no complaints. They have, there's nothing that's been charged like serving minors, or there hasn't been any real concerns that have been brought before us at all. And during the Hogs for Hospice, they had one massive crowd there, and they handled that extremely well, and I heard of no complaints for alcohol dispensing at that particular point in time. So I think they've demonstrated that their operation is capable of ensuring that there's no underage drinking, and that they will, continue to serve the public as they have in that particular area. And I think it'd be a great benefit for the visitors on the beach and in the park to have that option provided to them. So based on those comments, I would move the motion.
All right, supported by Councillor Verbicki. I know Councillor Hammond had questions or comments.
Your Worship, thank you. This may be an unfair question for Brenda, but I'm unfamiliar with the lease arrangements. Do they lease by the year, by the month, or is it based on a percentage of sales?
Mr. Sharon?
Yes, through you, Mayor Patterson. It is a monthly lease, and the amounts of those leases have been established a couple of years in advance. I don't have the timing in front of me, Councillor.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, then we have a recommendation before us. All those in favor of? And carried. Thank you. There were no matters for approval or other matters for consideration, but we do have a report on closed session. Ms. Percy?
A closed meeting was held at 5:45 prior to the open session of council pursuant to subsection 239(2)(c) for the purpose of considering confidential report CAO 1216 regarding a potential sale of municipal lands. Proper notice of the meeting was given, and the meeting adjourned at 5:48 p.m. During the meeting, direction was provided to administration.
Okay, and Mr. Dunn or Councillor Dunn has declared a conflict on this item. Questions, comments? Looking for mover and seconder. Don't need one? Nope. There's just a report of. Very good. All right. So then we move into consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 60-16 being a bylaw to borrow an amount authorized to be borrowed by certain municipal drainage bylaws and to borrow the same by the issue of debentures. And bylaw 61-16 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council from its meeting held September 26, 2016.
Council moved by Councillor Hammond, supported by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. No notices of motion were circulated, so we're into open session of council and admin. Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. I just wanted to comment, Sunday afternoon I went to a performance at the Bank Theatre. It was well attended. They did On Golden Pond, and it was, in fact, every performance over the 2 weeks was a packed house, and I wanted to compliment them on a great job and put it out there that if you haven't been to one of the plays, you should go. It's really a nice day, nice outing.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you. My comments regarding the library dispute, and I'm hoping that the county will get back to the table. My concern is that it hits the most vulnerable, the elderly and the financially challenged, especially in this computer age. This is the only way they have access when everything going to the computer. And so I would just like to see that this get back to negotiating table.
Well, I've carried that message forward a few times now to County Council, and so I think we're all on the same page on that. Thank you. Yep. Just real quickly for me then, just to let you know that I have been doing stuff around here. On Tuesday, September 20th, our Economic Development Officer, our CIO, and I had a very lengthy, very open, very direct meeting with the new CEO of the Windsor-Essex County Economic Development Corporation. So We left feeling pretty good about the situation, but we'll certainly keep council in the loop as things move forward. On Thursday, September 22nd, I did represent all of us from council at St. Michel for the Ontario Francophone Day and did the raising of the flag. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of a power outage, so as hard as I tried to speak my high school French that I could remember, I had to do it through a megaphone, so I think only 6 people out of the 500 or 600 that were there could hear me, which is probably a good thing. On Saturday, September 24th, as many of you have already congratulated me for my huge endeavors, attended the Ruth Van Apple Festival, again on behalf of Leamington, and finally, after 6 years of attempting to do so, I won the apple peeling contest on behalf of Leamington. Number 1. That is one event that is extremely well attended. A lot of people there and a lot of vendors there as well. So I have asked some questions. A number of the other mayors that were in attendance were also saying, how does this happen and how do you get them here? So I was asking about pricing and stuff like that, and I'll be sharing that with admin. And then today, and I think a couple of other members of council were able to attend as well, South Shore Addiction Center opened its doors to all of us to go in and have a look on 15 John Street. And I spent quite a bit of time with Roberta Jeresny. Mayor Santos was there as well. And this really is a shared facility for basically people from Wheatley, Leamington, and Kingsville to attend for the help that they need. Really a nice facility. Two divisions. The lower division is where the medical end of things is being done, and the second floor where Roberta and her group are is where the personal help and guidance part of it is carried on. They're going to be looking for our support with the LIN, getting funding from the LIN to keep the operations moving ahead. But really impressive organization, and I can't help wish them well. Other than that, that's all I've got. Anything from administration? We're okay. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to go? Councillor Dunn? Councillor Wilkinson? All in favor? Carried.